So I got married when I was 23, and I really thought that the next thing would be childbirth. I thought that was the process. You get married, you have a baby. And a year after, 2 years, still waiting for a baby. And at the time, it wasn't really, I wasn't so worried about it because I saw myself as still young, and also I'd started a business which was doing well, a business which was thriving. I had a very, very good relationship with my husband. And so I thought that there's more time, basically. I'm still a young girl and there's more time. So it didn't trouble me so much, until I started getting questions, until, people started asking, where's the baby? I would go out and then somebody's asking, where are the children? But you should have had 2 by now. How many years ago? Sometimes right in front of you, counting back to when your engagement was, when your wedding was, and then asking, but why? What are you doing? And it was quite difficult. I mean, if I live in Ghana, and it's sometimes I think it's quite a cultural thing. I don't know in other parts of Africa, but it's quite normal here where any older person can feel they are your mother or father and talk to you as they wish, without thinking of your concerns, without thinking of your emotions or how you feel. And so it can be quite insensitive a lot of the time, but it's quite normal here. And I got that quite a lot after a while, after a couple of years. And I think that is when it started troubling me, when I felt like everybody was looking at me, and people started talking about me. You'd hear different things. One time a friend said to me she was at a program, and after a group of ladies had come together and were talking, and one of them mentioned the brand RenéeQ and said, they were talking about how it's doing so well, and how one of them was saying how they admired, the way I run my business. And so they were all sort of saying positive things about me, until one of them had to say, yeah, all RenéeQ and all that. But at the end of the day, she's barren. So to hear that word associated with my name was heartbreaking. Yes, I think it was when I started my business. I had a client who would come, and she was such a lovely lady. So I had a client who, anytime she came to the shop, we'll talk a little bit about Christ. At that time, I hadn't given my life to Christ, and I used to go to church as and when I felt like. So if my hubby and I woke up in the morning and we felt like, oh, should we get up and go, then we'll go. If not, it's Sunday in bed. And I really didn't think it was a problem. I didn't think it was a big deal, because we weren't really doing anything. It was just a couple chilling, and just going to church as and when. This lady, anytime she came to my shop, would talk about Christ, or would just say one thing or two. I remember she asked me one time where I fellowship. Where do you fellowship? I didn't even know what she meant by fellowship. And she asked me, where do you go to church? And I said, oh, I'm Catholic. So, I told her what church I went to, and she said, okay. And she said that she goes to a prayer meeting once a week, and she would like to invite me. At that time, I was just like, please, I don't do those kind of things. I was like, I'm not going to go to anything like that. So anytime she told me about it, I'll give her an excuse, and I'll say, oh, I'm so sorry, I have another program to go to, or I wish you told me earlier, or things like that. Anytime she invited me to some program, I had an excuse for her. There was one time she came, and she said, it was a Monday, I remember, and she said she was going to the prayer meeting, and she said she would wait for me. So when I was ready, then we'll go together. And I thought, oh my goodness, if I don't go, this lady is not leaving. So I said, okay, that's fine. I was almost close. It was almost, I think, I was almost close anyway. So I went with her. So following her, I was just thinking, so driving behind her, I was just thinking, my goodness, where are we going? Where am I going? I don't even know this lady too well. She's my client. She comes in every now and then, and where is she taking me? I was asking myself all kinds of questions. Am I safe? I was hearing all these voices saying all different kinds of things. I haven't even told my husband yet. So I called my husband, and I told my husband that I was going to a prayer meeting. I'm sure he was shocked, but he just said, oh, okay, see you later. So we got there, and She got out of the car, came to my car, and I told her to go. And I told her, I'm right behind you, you go, I'll come in. So it took me a while. I was so confused, I was so troubled, I was worried, and I was just saying all kinds of things. And I was so frustrated. And I just said to myself, is there even a God? Does God even exist? Is there even a God? And I said that, and I got out of the car, and I just slammed the door. I went in, and when I went in, the service had started already, so there was worship going on, and there were so many people, different places. Some people's hands were up, some people were kneeling. So I couldn't see properly. I mean, I couldn't see who was sitting where. So I didn't see where, the lady was sitting. So an usher ushered me somewhere else, and I sat there, and I just started crying. I don't know why I was crying. There was just something that, the song, there was a song that we were singing, it was a tree song, and it was just like ministering to me. I didn't know the song, but as I was listening to the words and interpreting the words, it was just so, I just started crying, and I sat there, I put my head down, and I was just crying and crying and crying until worship was over, and then the woman of God came up. So she came up, and then she started speaking, and she said, I don't really normally do this. It's normally after the sermon, but the Holy Spirit is leading me so much to call this lady. Immediately I said to myself, this is another place you come and they call you and they tell the whole world your problems. So I was thinking, my goodness, another reason I don't want to be here. I was saying this to myself. So she called, and then I was looking back to see who she was calling, and she said, no, you don't look back, you, the lady in the polka dot dress. I was wearing a polka dot dress that day. The usher came, tapped my shoulder, and I was just like, my goodness, not today. The first day I've come, you're coming to tell the whole world my problems. Why? I seriously, we got to the front, and God proving himself God to me. I said that this lady was going to to share my problem, to tell the whole world. But guess what? I got to the front, and she put her mic down, and she whispered to me. I brought my head down because of the height difference. I brought my head down, and she whispered to me. She said, I don't know who you are. I haven't met you before, but God said I should tell you he is God. And at that point, I just fell on the floor. I remember I just went like that. I just collapsed. Before, I used to hear so many stories about pastors choking you, and the ushers will choke you and push you and all of that. And I can tell you for a fact, nobody pushed me that day and nobody choked me that day. I just went like this, and I was on the ground. And it was so powerful to me. It was such an encounter. Today, I understand it, and I can call it an encounter. It was such an encounter because I had spoken to God, and he responded directly. Because before I came in, I asked, are you even a God? Now I come in, and the first thing, the lady calls me and said, God said I should tell you he is God. Another thing too that I also learned that day was that the Holy Spirit is in control. That's when you're in a genuine place. The Holy Spirit is in control, because I was down and the ushers were trying to lift me up, and they couldn't even lift me up. And I remember the woman of God said, just leave her. And she continued the service. Now at that time, I gave my life to Christ. I came back, I told my husband about it. He was very, very happy. He said, let's go. I told him about the church and everything. And ever since, we've been a member of the church, and ever since, we have learned that giving your life to Christ isn't really about the church that you attend, but it's about developing a relationship with him. And this is what we started to do by God's grace. So even though we're growing spiritually, we also had to seek medical attention, and we saw many different doctors. There were a few doctors, and 2 doctors that I had quite terrible experiences with here in Ghana. It was quite difficult. I don't mention the hospital or mention their names, but I had one artificial insemination in one of them. Another one I went to for reviews and all that. And the way I was spoken to and the whole experience and everything really shattered me for a while. For a while, I was really broken for a while. So I just couldn't go to doctors here, go to hospitals, see doctors here for a while, I would always seek medical attention abroad. So we started going out and seeing doctors, and all of them would tell me there's nothing wrong with you. We saw about 4 specialists, and there was even one that told me one time that you have such a beautiful womb. And I was like, this is not about beautiful womb. This is about carrying the baby. Where is the baby? You know, and all of them were saying that there was nothing wrong with me. I never conceived. I never conceived at all. I knew a couple of people who sometimes, unfortunately, were having miscarriages or stillbirths. And I remember there was a time that, naive as I was, or broken as I was, or confused as I was, there was actually a time that I was wishing for a miscarriage. Wishing, because I felt like if I had that, and you asked me where my children were, and I mentioned to you that I had miscarried or I had a stillbirth, you probably would be a bit gentler when dealing with me. You probably would be a bit empathetic. And that was quite a confusing time. I must say, it became quite a difficult time in my life. You know, so I've been on so many different medications. I remember there was one time I was on this medication, and there was this pharmacy that I went to, and every month I'll go and buy that medication. There was one time that I was passing by and I needed to buy something from the pharmacy, and as soon as I entered I opened the door and entered. There were a few people in there, and the pharmacist was behind the counter, another counter behind the counter, and he just shouted, "Madam, we don't have," you know, then he mentioned the medication. "Madam, we don't have it today, oh." You know, and I just thought, my goodness. So as soon as he saw me, he just saw that medication written on my forehead. Is that all I am now? Do you see me as this medication for fertility? Do you see me as this medication, you know, for, I was broken. So I've been broken with this issue in different ways. So I remember there was a time I was at a wedding, and, you know, getting my groove on the dance floor, and then I get a tap. I turn around, and the question I'm asked is, "You know, go born, won't you have a child?" And I thought, oh my goodness. I mean, I didn't voice it out, but it was just like that. I mean, all these things. So I at the time, I really became confused. Even though I'd given my life to Christ, I started speaking to him and asking him what I had done. There was one time I just took a walk, and as I was walking, I said, "God, why? Why? What have I done? And if I've done anything, forgive me. And if there's anything I need to correct, please let me know." And I said, "God, why are you doing this to me?" Because, you know, everybody is talking about me. People mention my name, and some try to say positive things about me, and somebody will try to say something, to use the word barren associated with my name. You know, I thought, God, you know, you are God, you know everything. So you definitely knew that this is something that I was going to go through. So why didn't you make me this little quiet lady sitting somewhere, minding her own business, suffering in private? But no, you've made me this force, and I'll call myself a force because you, God, have made me this force. My name is mentioned. People can recognize my name. People know who I am. And next to what they see is what? This fertility drug? Or, I mean, I was just so broken. And I heard a voice. It was like a loud laughter. And what I heard was, "Do you think this is about you? This story is for my glory," is all that I heard. And I just was like, oh. And I just kept quiet. It was really difficult. Very, very, I've struggled through this, you know, prayer and all that. We had 2 artificial inseminations. We had 2 IVFs, all of them failed. I've had so many laparoscopies. The most difficult thing, really, really difficult, you know, all of it failed. And so I gave up. I remember one time I went and saw my pastor, and I said to my pastor, you know, I really want to tune my mindset to believe that I'm one of the women maybe who aren't destined to have a child. And if I do that, I'll be able to handle it better if I'm asked a question, or if I see a baby or something like that. And my pastor was like, "Never. Don't even say that. Don't even think that. Why would you even say that? You definitely will have a child. See a doctor." And at that time, there was a lady who was in our ministry who had just had twins. She was in her 50s. She had just had twins, her first set of children. And my pastor said, go and see that doctor who helped her. It was a doctor in Ghana. And she said, you're always going out and all that, but there are good doctors here. Go and see that particular doctor. So she gave me his number. I went and saw the doctor. And he, I had to go and, again, tell the whole story and all that. And then he said, let's try IVF again. And I said, okay. I told my husband about it. My husband had a meeting that day, he couldn't come with me. So he said, you go and see him, come and let me know what he says, and then we'll plan a day to go together. So he asked me what my husband thought. I said, my husband is happy with whatever you decide. I'll go and talk to him about it. But he said, before we have the IVF, you have to have another laparoscopy. I'd had already about 5 laparoscopies at the time. He said, we'll have to have another laparoscopy. Now, before you have a laparoscopy, you have to make sure that you're not pregnant. Because if you're pregnant, that procedure can be like washing out the baby. So you have to make sure that you're not pregnant. So he said, before we book for the laparoscopy, let's have a pregnancy test. So I had a urine test negative, blood test negative, and then he said, let's scan the womb, because sometimes you may be pregnant, but it's not showing, but the baby is in there. So let's scan the womb. So I went and laid there. He scanned the womb. He turned the screen. He said, as you can see, this is your womb here, and there's no baby in your womb. So you're not pregnant. I said, yes, I see it. And then I went back, we sat down, and then we booked for the laparoscopy to be on a Thursday. I went to see him on a Monday. Now that day, my husband comes home from work, and he asked me, how did it go? And I said everything to him, and I said, so I booked for the laparoscopy on Thursday. He said, oh, you can't do it on Thursday. We are traveling on Friday. And I said, where are we traveling on Friday? That became an argument. And then I was just, it was shocking. Looking back, it was shocking because my husband is not the kind of man who will insist or force things on you. I mean, if I'd said to him that, knowing the kind of person he is, he probably would have said, so when should we go? And then he would just change the flight. But for some reason, for him to insist and say, we are going. Well, I booked it and that's it, we are going. It was so shocking. And we just had this argument and all that. Now, as we're talking and all that, I just heard in my mind, submission. And when I heard submission, I just kept quiet. Even though I had a lot of things to say back at him, even though I was ready to say a lot of things back, when I heard submission, I just kept quiet. And he kept quiet. So we're traveling on Friday. This happened on Monday. During the week, it was quite a cold, hello, hi kind of relationship. And then we traveled. We're going to Dubai, and then we're going to South Africa. We got to Dubai and then spent, I think, 2 days there or so. And then we went to South Africa. Now, we always go to South Africa for our medicals once a year. So we booked to have our medicals, and then, around that time as well is my husband's birthday, it's Valentine's Day, it's also just like my bed. So we have a birthday around the same time. So it's just to go and have our medicals and everything, then have a bit of a celebration and then come back. So we had booked to see our doctor that day. We got there around 4 a.m. The appointment was at 10 a.m. And I remember we went and saw her, and as soon as she saw me, she's like, oh, Renee, are you pregnant? You're glowing. And I thought, please, this is not the time to even ask me such a question. If you know what has happened and the argument we are having and the kind of relationship it has put us in right now, please don't even say anything. So I didn't say anything, just let it go. I didn't say anything. She's an older woman. I mean, I couldn't say anything. And she said she had booked as well for us to see a fertility specialist. We go, she knows us. We've been seeing her for about, at that time we had been seeing her for more than over 4 years. So she knew our situation and all that. So that year, for some reason, when we got there, she said she had booked for us to see a specialist. And he's one of the best in Pretoria. She told us his name. So later on, I Googled his name and I saw that he was among the top 10 in Pretoria. He was number 2 or number 3 or so. So she had already booked for us to see the doctor the next day. Now, this is all different. I've shared this testimony so many times, but I'm really struggling right now. And I don't know why. It's sometimes recalling all the events and all that, even though I've gone through it so many times, sometimes for some reason, I just feel different about it each time. And so I'm really struggling today, I have to say. And, I remember that day the doctor took our bloods and urines and all of that. And just before we left, she asked if she could do a particular test. She said the doctors had gone on they'd gone on a conference or something like that, and they learned that there was a particular hormone in a woman that if the hormone level was above a certain percentage, then it's like the woman's body rejects pregnancy. So she asked me if she could check for that hormone level in my body. And I said, look, you've taken my blood, you've taken my urine, do what you want to do. At that time, I really wasn't in the mood for any kind of chit-chatty thing about pregnancy. So I just said, you know what, just do what you want to do. And that was it. So we got back to the hotel, and there was still a bit of tension. In the evening, my husband was watching football, he fell asleep. And quite late, it was around 2 a.m. I couldn't sleep. I was just lying down. My husband's birthday was it was 2 or 3 days to my husband's birthday. And around 2 a.m. or so, I went and had a shower. And I just started speaking, and I just said, God, this man has been so good to me. He's been such a blessing. We have such a beautiful relationship. We have such a strong relationship. We are such good friends. He's really uplifted me many times. He's encouraged me so many. He's such a good person. And not only to me, but to his family, to his friends. He deserves more than this. This is what I was just saying, that he deserves so much more. And I was just crying. I've cried so many different kinds of tears. Now this was just, I would say quiet tears. It was just under the shower, tears just dropping down. And I just kept saying, God, this man deserves more. And I said, God, why won't you bless me with a child? So I would give it to him as a gift on his birthday. So that was my prayer that morning. I said, God, why won't you please bless me with a child? And so on his birthday, probably we'll go for dinner or something, and I'll say, happy birthday, Han, guess what? I'm pregnant, happy birthday. And that was my prayer. So I came back and he was still sleeping. I, fell asleep. Around 10 a.m., the phone is ringing. I pick it up. Dr. Mary, Renee, come to the hospital now. Renee, you are pregnant. Come to the hospital now. And at that point, I was really irritated because I felt like we came yesterday. You said something about pregnancy. I didn't say anything. You can't call me this morning. I know we have an appointment. We haven't even got it. The appointment was at 12. She called around 10 a.m. Still doing. So I thought she was joking. I was really upset. So I just gave the phone to my husband, and I just walked away. And I came back. My husband was on the phone. He was quiet. And he was like, okay. And I just heard, okay. When he got off, I said, what was she saying? She said we should come now and that you are pregnant. And I couldn't say anything. Now, looking back, now I think and I say to myself that we pray to God as Christians. I'm talking about Christians. We pray to God and we ask God for a miracle. We pray and we say, Father, Lord, bless me with a miracle. Now, what is a miracle? A miracle is something that will just happen instantly, that you are not expecting that. Like water turning into wine. That is a miracle. How can water immediately, instantly, with no chemical, nothing, turn into wine? That's a miracle. Now, you're praying, asking God for a miracle. That's saying that anything suddenly should change to something. Now, this was my prayer around 2 a.m. Father, Lord, bless me with the fruit of the womb. Bless me with a gift that I can give unto my husband around 2 a.m. Now, if at 10 a.m. I've been called to say that the Lord has done it, why am I doubting it? And at that time, today I look back and that's what nowadays that's what I think. And I always say that, God should forgive us Christians for doubting sometimes, for asking him for things, and he does the things, and when he does it, we are doubting it. When he does it, we are asking ourselves, is it true? Really? Will it work? This, and all those kinds of things. So I remember we went to the hospital, and Dr. Mary said to us that she checked the hormone level, And in a woman, it's supposed to be at a certain percentage, but it was way above. I don't remember the exact numbers she told us, but she said it was way above. And she said, if it's above a certain number, is either you have a chronic disease like a cancer or something, God forbid, thank God I don't have any of that, or it's like it's like there's another being inside of you, or there's a growth inside of you, basically, something like that. So she said when she saw that, she just did a pregnancy test and it was positive. Now this is me in front of the woman arguing that it's not possible. Oh my God, forgive me. This is what I'm saying. I asked for a miracle at 2 a.m. God gave me the miracle by 10 a.m. This is me sitting before the doctor saying it's not possible. I've just come from Ghana and I did a pregnancy test. I did a urine test. I did a scan. This. It's just been how many days? This is me back and forth. Then she said, look. I'm just a GP. I'm not a specialist. I've already booked for you to see the specialist at 2 p.m. Go and see him. And when you go, just go and see what he says. So 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., that was the longest stretch ever. It was like 3 days. We finally went and saw this doctor. Very nice man. I think that was an angel that God just put aside for us. We went and saw this doctor. Again, you have to tell your whole history, your whole story. Told him everything, everything. Told him the whole history, story. He says, okay, let's go and let's do a bit of a scan and let's see if there's anything, let's check your tubes, all of that. So I went and laid there, and this man is just scanning my womb. And normally, I think I've done it so many times, I sort of know just how it just, the whole process or the flow. But I realized he goes somewhere and he presses a bit, and then he goes somewhere, and then he presses a bit, and goes to the same place and presses a bit. And I was thinking, what are you doing? Then after a while, he turned the screen and he said, I don't know what you were talking about, but this is your womb here, and that's a baby in your womb. And he said the baby is 5 weeks old. 5 weeks old. We had left Ghana about 5 days before. 5 weeks old. Now, that is a miracle. And my son's name is Sentrene. Sentrene means miracle. His first name is Zane, and Zane means God's gift. Zane Sentrene. God's gift, a powerful miracle. I mean, I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. I was just like, my goodness, and truly, 2 days after, it was my husband's birthday. Truly, we went for dinner. We sat before each other. We were eating. At a point, I said, happy birthday, Odo. Happy birthday, I'm pregnant. What I asked the Lord for, the Lord did it. The gift I asked to give to my husband, the Lord did it. The Lord gave it to me. Now, saying this has just brought to my mind that sometimes when we pray and ask for things, and it's not a selfish prayer, it's not just for us. It's not just for us. Anytime I was praying for the fruit of the womb, for the fruit of the womb. It was a general prayer for the fruit of the womb. Of course, for all of us, fruit of the womb, of course, is for husband and wife. So for the fruit of the womb. But that day was a specific prayer where I said that my husband deserves a gift that I cannot afford to give him. I've given him so many shirts, ties, cufflinks. I mean, it's so difficult to buy gifts for men. And what he wants, the kind of things that my husband likes, I cannot afford it right now. I mean, what I know he wants, I cannot afford it right now. So my prayer is, God, you give me something that I can present unto him that will be a gift to him. So that day, the prayer and my everything that I was asking the Lord for was not for me, but was for me to give unto him as a gift. And the Lord did it. And the Lord did it. So by God's grace, we found out that I was pregnant in South Africa. Now the doctor said to me that because I had struggled for a while, and because we had traveled from, it was quite a long journey from Ghana to Dubai to South Africa. He didn't want me to risk it. So he said, he wasn't even going to allow me to go back to Ghana, to come back to Ghana. So he wrote a letter, and immediately my visa was turned to a medical visa, and I was going to stay in South Africa. And I used to go on courses a lot. I used to take a lot of courses, sometimes a 6 weeks course, a 3 months course. So I just, normally would say to my family when I'm going on the course, so I'm going to London to study this, so I'm going to this. So in a way, it wasn't too strange for me to be away for a while. And I told everybody that I was going on a course. I didn't tell anybody that I was pregnant. And I was in South Africa, and I was pregnant, carrying my baby. And during the pregnancy, my goodness, the different things that I went through, that's a whole other story. Now, I'm sharing this because today, that pain and that story, today I can share to encourage other women out there. I know exactly, because at a point I said to myself that I wasn't going to count. Like the way my auntie saw me that day and counted the months and the years in front of me and all that. I said to myself that I wasn't going to count. That troubles us as well. Everybody in waiting, any kind of waiting. You wake up in the morning, you're like, oh my goodness, it's another day, it's another month, it's another year. And then you are panicking and panicking and panicking. And that doesn't do any better. That even worsens the situation. So I remember I said to myself, I'm not going to count. The day that I count, the day I have my baby and the day I'm breastfeeding, that's the day I'll go back to when I got married and start counting to know exactly how long it took for the Lord to bless us with this gift. And so I remember that day I was breastfeeding. I asked my husband for his phone. I checked from the date we got married till that day, and it was 9 years, 6 weeks, and 3 days. The Lord did it. Very, very difficult time, confusing time, troubling time, painful time. But all of that, by God's grace, that mess has become a message that today I can share on different platforms. Churches invite me. I'm invited on different platforms. A lot of, female wellness programs, so many different platforms to come and share my story, to encourage somebody else somewhere. There was one time that the first time that we had the IVF, which was in the UK, again, I said that I was going for a course. I told my family I was going for a course. This time it wasn't a course. This time it was IVF, but I didn't tell anybody. And my husband and I went. And when we got there, a few days after, my brother called me and told me he was getting married, my older brother. And I thought, why didn't you tell me so that I would have planned it after your wedding? I've just gotten here. This is my thoughts. How am I going to just come back? I'm coming to do IVF. IVF, if it's pregnant, I'm not coming. No. I mean, all these thoughts. So I remember I said to my brother, I've come for a course. If they're able to give me a break, I'll come to your wedding and come back. If not, I'm so sorry, I might miss your wedding. So now that break was, what I meant was, if the IVF works and I'm pregnant, I can come. But if it doesn't work, then I'll be able to come. I mean, painful decision, So we went through that. We went through the IVF, and unfortunately, it didn't work. So I was able to go to my brother's wedding. Now, on the flight from the UK back to Ghana, I was crying. I don't know how long that flight was. It was probably the longest flight I've ever taken from London to Accra. I cried the whole time. My eyes were swollen when I got here. The engagement, I think, was about 2 or 3 days after. This is me in my kente, smiling with everybody, holding whatever I was holding behind. The wedding day, I dressed my sister-in-law up. I did her makeup. I dressed her up, laughing and all that. At that time, a vein on my stomach, I had a stretch mark on my stomach, which was swollen because in injecting my stomach with the IVF shots, I had injected one of them and it was so swollen, it was so painful. But who knew what was behind that smile? Who knew the pain that was behind that laughter? Who knew the pain that was behind that beautiful kente I was wearing? Who knew the pain? Again, another thing I'll say is to celebrate with others, no matter what you are going through. So just because I wasn't going through happiness, or just because I was going through pain, didn't mean that I couldn't celebrate with somebody who was, just because you are going through pain doesn't mean that you cannot be joyful for somebody who is in joy or who is happy. And so that's another lesson. I've learned so many different lessons, but that's another lesson that I've learned. But I just thank God that, today I'm able to encourage ladies out there to be able to, to not give up, to believe in God, to have faith, to pray, to believe that the miracle, the prayer answering and miracle working God can do it. And what's the point in praying and asking for it when you are still doubting? Because we are still doubting, because when he does it, we don't believe it. That means when we're praying and asking, we didn't believe that it could happen. Then where is the faith? It hasn't been easy. It's still not easy, I've had my first son by God's grace. I'm praying for my second. I'm praying for my third. But in times when even now I begin to doubt again, because I'm so human as I am, I quickly remember that God has done it for me before. Why do I think he cannot do it for me again? That I quickly remember. And sometimes I say, I'm so sorry, my Father. I'm so sorry, God. You haven't changed. You are still the same God. You are still the I am that I am. The same way you did it for me with Renée, you will do it for me again, and you will do it for me again. I was going to say another again, but no, I just want two agains. So, yeah, you will do it for me again. And that is the God we serve. That is the God we serve. Now, my name is RenéeQ Boateng, and I'm the host of the RenéeQ Show. Now, this is what the RenéeQ Show is about. For women to come and share a bit of their life story, a bit of their, maybe a testimony, maybe something that they've been through, that they struggled through, that they didn't think they would win, that they didn't think they could make it, that they didn't think they could come through, but by God's grace, they did it. And today, they might look back and they'll see it as such an influential message that they can share to uplift, to encourage, and to empower a woman, two ladies, maybe every woman in the world out there. So this is what the RenéeQ Show is about. Real stories, real lessons, real impact. And this really is what we should share our stories for. This is what I am happy to share my stories for. And I have so many beautiful ladies who will be joining us every week to share their stories. And I know you will be uplifted and empowered. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next week. Stay blessed.